Hi. I help people learn to innovate. It's pretty amazing work, and I like to think I'm getting pretty good at it. And yet, a few years ago, I had a 10-day experience that forever changed the way I think and go about that work. I hadn't planned it. I hadn't even realized it until towards the end of those 10 days, but I've managed to schedule myself with 4 very distinct groups of people. The first was a 500-person engineering firm that brought 22 of those people together from across the company to change how they do business. The second was a class of university students taking a class I'd been fortunate to design in ideation, coming up with really big ideas. The third was a group of leaders of charities and nonprofits in my city that were trying to innovate in that sector. And the last, the fourth, was a class of grade 6 and 7 students, equal parts scary for me, because I don't normally work with them, and wonderful. Now I ask you, if you had to put your money on it, which of those groups do you think stood out among the others at being good at some basic innovation tasks that I gave to all of them? Yeah, you're all guessing. None of them. It turns out that none of them did. It's true, I was surprised at the end of that 10 days to notice, when I did, that there was no standout group. The for-profit firm I described with all that embedded talent and experience, they did no better than the university students. And they did no better than the grade 6 and 7 students did. It really surprised me. It blows my mind in the work that I do that there are standout individuals from time to time, but there are no standout groups. It seems that age and experience don't help us get any better at that. I want to put on the table today that the world's biggest problem isn't malnutrition or the state of our economy or education, and that your firm or your organization's biggest problem isn't hiring its next leader or whatever's on your desk today. Rather, I want you to think about those as symptoms. And where if you take any one of those and you say, well, why is that a problem? And what could we do about it? And get an answer. And then you take that and do the same thing and say, why is it a problem? What can we do about it? And get an answer. Then before too long, you end up looking at something that I call innovation literacy. Something we've all got inside of us to a certain extent, but that after about 5 to 7 years of age, starts to get evaluated away in favor of other genuinely important things. I don't mean to take anything away from anybody, by the way, today. Important things that are possibly easier to measure as we go through school and then into college and university and then get that job and go on to a career. So I'd like now to put on the table a great big fat analogy for this thing called innovation literacy. This is my favorite video on the whole planet right now. It's my 5-year-old daughter taking this summer, me on my bike behind her on hers after she learned to ride a 2-wheeler. And it's probably one of those videos that when I'm an old man sitting in a nursing home, not able to do anything else, I'll just watch it again and again and again with a big smile on my face. But I share it with you because I've just said that after 5 to 7 years of age, society's not good at fostering innovation. And I want you to look at how young we are at that point in time. And think about the fact that there are CEOs and artists and scientists and engineers and others who are not as good at certain things as somebody that young. And some of those things on their own are really important things. And others are what I call platform skills that you need to be able to build to other things, deeper levels of impact. Now, I also share this with you for another reason, and that is to talk about that adage that says, once you know how to ride a bike, you never forget. We know that, and it's absolutely true. But it is both a blessing and a curse. Consider this. There's a guy named Destin Sandlin. You may have heard of him, well known for his educational videos to popularize science. He does some really cool stuff, and one day someone in a shop handed him what's known as a backwards bike. Now, the backwards bike looks kind of like this from the top. It's rigged up so that when you turn the handlebar to the left, the wheel goes to the right. And when you turn the handlebar to the right, the wheel goes to the left, like that. Now, we get how this works. Mechanically, it's pretty straightforward. It's just some gears, and when you touch it and use it, it all makes sense. And everybody knows how to ride a bike. Everyone listening to this probably does. And yet nobody who rides that bike can do it. They fall off again and again and again. It's fascinating. And I think, for example, actually, I should say, he spent 8 months, 5 minutes a day trying to learn how to ride this thing. And I think that helps me make a case that there are, while parts of our brains are really good at knowing exactly what's going on, just turn the handlebar the other way, buddy, or just innovate, would you? Other parts of our brains do simply and quite reliably what they have always done for us. We get caught in these mental ruts that we easily fall back into, so we try and get out and fall back in, and they're very hard for us to escape. Now, this is just an analogy. I get that, and riding a bike is a motor skill and not a cognitive thing. I've thought about that too. But it turns out that innovation is every bit as much a physical in the world thing, requiring different parts of our brains and bodies. And innovation, just like this backwards bike story, risks falling prey to the fact that we conflate the fact that you don't know how to do something yet with the idea that it looks like it's hard for us to do. This isn't actually hard for us to do. Others have since shown that you can learn to ride a backwards bike in about 10 hours, if you spread that over a few to 10 days. It's absolutely learnable, despite how tough it is when you first try and ride it. So to prove that point, I taught myself to ride a unicycle in 10 mornings. This is me on the 10th morning, an hour a day, and now I can ride a unicycle. I can also ride a bike, of course, and I know that if you give me a backwards bike in 10 hours spread over 10 days, I'll be able to do it. And add that to my repertoire. And that's the point of this great big fat analogy that I'm talking about. It's about our repertoires and the fact that most of the time when we add things to them related to innovation, they don't pull us out of our mental ruts in such a way that it becomes something new to our repertoires. We get pulled right back into it. When it comes to innovation, I want to say that we're good with post-it notes and we're often good with look in the look. But with respect, I would say that innovation literacy isn't usually part of our repertoires. So let's talk a little bit about innovation literacy, because some pretty interesting and really important things come to light when you study this stuff. And you look at those people who do stand out among us, and have done some of this, and when you look at what's in their repertoires that isn't in everybody else's repertoires. So I want to get specific now and talk to you about a time, give you a literacy, give you one to think about. A time when, a few years ago, I made an observation that forever changed how I think about coming up with ideas and how people come up with them. And I call it really big value ideation. Now, in order to understand this one, you need to know this. Most of your ideas suck. And I say this to you with no desire to insult you, and of course it's nothing personal. I've said it to top leaders and steely-eyed executives. And here's why. Because research like this tells us that for every 3,000 raw ideas that pop into our head, only one of them goes on to be deemed a success. So if you boil that down and do a little bit of math, there's something like a 99.97% chance that the idea that pops into your head isn't going to be a success even. So it's pretty overwhelming. And the fact on top of that we don't just want ideas that become success. None of us really do. We want those ones that are really high impact, that your eyes light up, that when someone hears it, the business plan just writes itself, that everything flows from there. And if you do the math on the statistics, it's something like a 99.999% chance that the idea that you have, or your colleague has, or your boss has, isn't going to be one of those. So the odds are pretty stacked against us. And yet, as humans, our nature is to get anchored to our very first ideas, our early stage ideas. I've met incredible people, really talented people, who've spent their mortgage and half a decade working on an idea, toiling away in their basement, and the idea was actually pretty crappy. And then not knowing anything about this, let alone what to do about it. And those of us that know something's up and want to do something about it, the prevailing wisdom from consultants and books and articles and things tends to be stuff to help us come up with more ideas in smarter ways. But then we take those and we throw them against the wall and see what sticks, metaphorically speaking. And that's important. I help people do that too. We need to do it. But don't think in doing that you aren't just playing the game of trying to beat these odds. What about, to pick a stereotypical example, Henry Ford? Why is it that he brought his cars when everybody wanted a better horse-drawn carriage? Or Muhammad Yunus. Why did he design a whole new form of business called the social business when leaders of charities and nonprofits and NGOs were all doing their jobs and doing them well? And why is it that the leaders of camera companies, those iconic camera companies of 20 years ago, they're not the same people who put a camera into the pocket of every person in this theater and watching this talk today? It turns out that really big value ideas, the ones I'm talking to you about, aren't the thing or they don't come from this thing, playing the odds. Instead, they come from people who have a certain innovation literacy that I've called really big value ideation. But what it means is that they don't play the odds, they change the odds. So it's changing your own odds versus playing them. And here's how I think about that. We all, most of us anyway, can come up with one of these, an idea that's highly feasible but not so impactful. We do it all the time. Hey, that's a good idea. Let's run that project. We know it's going to work. The dreamers among us can come up with ideas that are highly impactful, but not so feasible. It is someone who's truly innovation literate in this way that can come up with a starting point right there that is highly impactful and imminently feasible for them and the team that they're going to attract to them. And I call that really big value ideation. Now this stuff, when you watch it, it seems like magic. But it's not magic or luck or genetics at all. This can be learned. It absolutely can be learned. I've taught thousands of people to do this. They've learned it in minutes to hours, and then they master it or become, at the very least, proficient in hours to days, just like a backwards bike or a unicycle. It's amazing. So I also want to share with you, before I leave this point about really big value ideation, that it's not about making more Steve Jobs or Marissa Mayers in a cookie-cutter fashion. This is about the most highly impactful and highly imminently feasible version of whatever you're chasing down in a context that deeply inspires you. I also want to say that it's a piece of something bigger. Really big value ideation is a piece of something called deliberate opportunity design that here I'm labeling opportunity designer you. And that in turn is a piece of something bigger. I'm showing 6 pieces of it here that I've been talking about called innovation literacy. So all of these things are things that need us to get out of those ruts without getting sucked back in. And they're all things that are absolutely learnable, but we don't usually do it. I'd like to spend the rest of the afternoon and then the evening talking to you about these. Give you examples of them, bring them to life for you, and give you tools to go home and build your own practices. But I'm pretty sure they won't let me do that if I try. So instead, what I'm going to do is shift the conversation, ask you to come with me for a minute and start thinking about what would it take to get innovation literacy like that to anyone, anywhere on the planet who wants it. A couple months ago, I have 2 5- and 7-year-old daughters, and I took them to Pixar's new movie, Inside Out. It's an incredible movie about a young girl named Riley who goes through life's challenges. And what's incredible about it actually isn't that or the animation. It's the fact that we see inside her mind and they animate her 5 primary emotions: joy, sadness, fear, anger, and disgust. And we see them. Now, my 2 kids have never read a journal article in the scientific field of basic emotion theory. They probably never will. But they came out of that theater understanding the constructs of that theory. They were able to name them. They were able to interact with each other over the mental models that they imply. They were able to call each other's behavior out, and they did all this in the back of the car on the way home. And they were even able to talk to me later, say, hey, Dad, I think I'm going to basically modify my behavior based on what I saw there, which is incredible, actually, when you think about it. So this is a concept sketch. I understand they do sketches like this at Pixar when you pitch a movie. I'm no animator, even though I had fun making this, and I'm not here to pitch you on a movie. Something bigger than that, though, is what I want to argue for. What if all of us, and I mean all of us, I've used a child's movie as an example, but I would hazard most of us in this theater aren't where I'm going to go yet. What if all of us could conjure up storyteller me in our minds, one of those, or inspired me, or, and you know a little bit about this one now, opportunity designer me, and truly make use of them in those ways. And what if those were platforms that we build upon as we go through our careers and lives, and as we start seeing these things build and strengthen what we're able to do, so that when you meet that little blue one at some point in your career, I don't care what it is, creativity lessons or lean startup or customer development or design thinking, it doesn't require you to come out of a rut that you're likely to get pulled back into. Instead, you just put it on top of something that's in your repertoire. It's imperative that we make these kind of leaps for innovation literacy. Innovation is really important, no question about it. We all sort of know what it is, and we all want a piece of it. But I want to say to you that I think the ways we go about it and the ways we go out fostering it are undermining our ability to do it. They are hard to access. They're expensive to access. And they often come at us too late in life and career. And they rarely pull us out and really get us out of those ruts. What if a top executive course in this stuff didn't cost tens of thousands of dollars? What if a consultant didn't cost between tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars and still not always get us out in these ways? Better yet, what if that course and that consultant, when they went to market, they saw no demand because we all had this stuff under our belts, just like riding a bike. We need to innovate innovation education. We need to stop competing with each other to spread the Post-it notes on the wall because they're cool, the Lego on the desk because that's even cooler, and the let's get the keywords into the annual report notions of innovation. And I think we need to find the trust, and I think that's the right word, the trust in ourselves to make innovation literacy openly accessible to anyone, anywhere who wants it, from our kids to your CEO. So I want to say thank you very much for having me, and hi to my girls.